Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This segment's being brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their practices, and to leave a legacy. I'm doing a series of spotlights on remarkable business intermediaries from across the country. And joining me on this segment is Tawnya Gilreath. She's the founder of LA Business Pros. Tawnya, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Mark. Pleasure to
Tell
be
us a
here.
little bit about your work and specifically, who are the types of clients that you specialize in working with?
We are industry agnostic at LA Business Pros. And so, generally speaking, we work with business owners, most of whom are baby boomers that are wanting to retire. They've built businesses, terrific businesses over the past 30 or 40 years, and their kids don't want the businesses because their kids have their own careers. And so now they're in a position where they want to retire and they're not quite sure what to do. So the majority of our clients are baby boomers. We sell everything from service companies, accounting firms, tax firms, insurance books of business, on up to manufacturing companies and wholesale distribution companies and so forth.
So, the inspiration for the series is the Great Resignation. Has that helped? Is it really bringing more buyers into the market and making it really a good time to sell a business today?
It's a great time to sell a business right now, not so much because of the Great Resignation, but just because there's so much money in the marketplace right now with private equity firms, family funds, family offices, search funds. And then you have all these entrepreneurs that are leaving corporate America due to the Great Resignation. So I think in general, it's a really good time to sell a business. However, the buyers are really savvy, and the buyers are looking for good, well-run businesses with good financials. And if your business hasn't been prepared properly to sell, the buyers are just not interested. So it's very competitive out there for good, well-run businesses. But as for the others, they're pretty much sitting around.
And as you described with these boomer businesses, those are going to be good businesses. They've been building those up for years, and I imagine that they were thinking growth, growth, growth. So how much were they really thinking about selling? How prepared are they, or do they really need a lot of guidance when they reach out to you?
Many of them do need a lot of guidance, and the reason for it is this: if they don't think about selling their business. Usually you need to start preparing your business for sale at least 2 or 3 years in advance, and sometimes up to 5 or 7 years in advance if you're going to be selling to a key employee group or some insider, a company insider, or doing like a next generation transfer. But many of these business owners, they'll wake up one morning and they'll just say, I'm kind of tired of this. I think I want to sell. And at that point, a lot of the conversations I have with business owners, when they call me, they say, I want to sell my business. I say, okay, what steps have you taken to prepare it for sale? And they say, well, what do you mean? And so I think there's just a lack of fundamental education out in the marketplace for these business owners. They know their businesses inside and out. They're really great with that, but they've never sold a business before. So they don't really know what to expect or what to do or how to prepare it for sale.
Yeah, will you share a few of those things? Like, what are the big pillars that they should have prepared to make their business look attractive? And you mentioned how early in the process should they start preparing?
At least 3 years of financials, clean financials. And so, and the reason that I stress that is because I remember one company, it was a manufacturing company, and there were two partners in it. Their tax return showed about a $70,000 taxable income. And by the time we finished adding back the repairs to the beach house and the boat slip down at the marina and all these other non-business expenses that were being run through the business, their income was up really around 1.2 million. And so the problem with that is that you're a buyer coming in, when you have an enormous amount of add backs like that, it creates a credibility issue and a trust issue. And so now the buyer wants to look under every rock. This particular issue was even more complicated because their entity structure was a C corporation, and they wanted to sell the stock. They didn't want to do an asset sale. And when your books and records are sketchy, and I'll just say sketchy to be nice, but there's no buyer on the planet who's going to take on that potential liability. And so it's really critical that you have at least 3 years of good books and records, and clean and consistent. Clean them up. Make sure everything is, that your categorizations are consistent. Another key component is how owner-centric is the business. Because if the owner is doing all the business development, bringing in all the business, making all the decisions, then when that owner leaves, there's very little transferable value left for the buyer, because a buyer is going to be dependent really on the owner either sticking around for a number of years in order to transfer that. So it's really important to have processes and procedures that are documented, staff that's well trained, and some type of next level management in place.
Sage advice. Are there any other sort of myths or misconceptions floating around out there? I'm sure these folks are doing research and looking at some not so great information, perhaps. What have you heard out there that might not be quite accurate?
Well, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that a lot of times small business owners, and when I say a small business, I'm talking about a business that's going to sell for under $5 million. Okay. And when you have a small business, if you can go to your CPA, but CPAs don't sell businesses, so they can determine a business value for you, maybe, but they don't understand the marketplace necessarily. And so oftentimes what happens is that I'll have a business owner call and tell me, oh yeah, my CPA did a valuation for me, and they told me I should get a 10 to 12 multiple. Well, a 10 to 12 multiple is middle market. And if you're doing 50 million or 100 million in revenue, maybe you're going to get a 10 to 12. But if you are only doing $500,000 in revenue, you're not getting a 10 to 12 multiple. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions that really creates problems, because the seller's expectations are set so inaccurately from the get-go that it really takes quite a while to educate them and get them back down to reality.
Tawnya, what inspired you to become a business intermediary? Take us back a little bit and tell us, how did you get started?
I had a very roundabout journey. I have always been an entrepreneur, and I've just always been very creative. My background actually was in IT. I spent 20 years in IT doing software analysis, design and development, and also as an IT consultant. And so as an IT consultant, I was able to go into a lot of different businesses and identify different bottlenecks, work with, try to figure out how operations could do 3 times the amount of work with the same number of people and all of that. And so I think that carried over really well. During the tech wreck of 2001, I decided that I should get interested in real property as opposed to paper, because my entire portfolio tanked. And so that was really what drove me into real estate. In California, you're required to have a real estate license to sell businesses. And so once I got licensed and all of that, I actually got a phone call from a company that said, hey, have you ever thought about selling businesses? And that was far more interesting to me than selling real estate, quite honestly. So it was kind of a fluke, quite honestly. It just kind of fell into my lap. But I can tell you, Mark, that in all the 20 years of IT consulting and everything else, I belonged to all kinds of chambers of commerce, Leads Group, BNI, LaTip, all kinds of networking groups. I had not once met a business broker. I didn't really know that they existed. And so, I think that now, I've been doing this since 2006. I've been selling businesses since 2006. So I think now there's more knowledge about business brokerage and M&A advisory and all that out there in the marketplace and on the internet. Certainly sellers have access to a lot more information than they used to, but I can tell you there's still a lot of small business owners that don't understand that they can retire, that they have an asset that is saleable if they've managed it properly. And so they don't need to cut off their marketing and shut down their business just because their kids don't want the business and their wife wants them to retire. And I think that's, those are the conversations that I was hearing in the Chamber of Commerce. And that was one of the reasons that I became very interested in business sales and business brokerage, is because, there's a lot of satisfaction in really being able to help a business owner who's worked so hard be able to monetize that investment and be able to move on to the next stage of his life. And so it's just phenomenal. I really enjoy it.
It shows, and that is terrific. And it's another one of the inspirations for this entire series is just the fact that entrepreneurs and are like the engine of this entire economy. So it's like getting them the information that they need to thrive. That's one of the inspirations for this entire series. So Tawnya, before I ask you my last question, is there anything that I didn't think to ask that you feel is important to share in regards to selling or buying a business even in today's economy?
Well, I think in terms of selling a business, definitely start early. If when you wake up one morning and decide that you're burned out and you want to sell, you might be able to sell the business. But I can tell you that if you look out on bizbuysell.com, which is one of the biggest business for sale marketplaces out there, they have at any given time maybe 30 to 40,000 businesses for sale that are on that site. But when you look at their insight report and at their statistics, what you find is that, let's say for fourth quarter of or first quarter of 2022, if there's 40,000 businesses for sale, you might find that 2,600 of them actually sold. And so there's right around 6% or so of businesses in that small business marketplace that are actually selling. And the reason for that is artificially inflated prices, an absence of documents, an absence of clean financials, or the inability actually to establish or to substantiate the asking price. And so it's just really important that the business owner take a little bit of time, in the years prior to putting that business on the market, get your house in order. Because the truth of the matter is, if they were going to sell their car, they'd at least get the 10-year-old next door to get out the garden hose and hose it down. But they don't think the same way about their business. All they think is, hey, the business, it put my kids through college. It bought me all my luxury toys. Anybody walking in is going to see what a great business it is. But the truth is, the buyers, like I said, are more savvy, and they walk in, and for all they know, your kids went to college and all your luxury toys were purchased with an inheritance from your grandmother. Right?
Great insight. Tawnya, for folks listening who are considering selling their business and they definitely realize they need help, or folks looking to buy a business, how can they find you, connect with you, and learn more?
They can just go out to labusinesspros.com.
Terrific. Tawnya, I really appreciate you taking the time to share with my audience today. This was fantastic, and I wish you continued success for you and for all of your clients.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. Thanks for having me on. Much appreciated.
That was Tawnya Gilreath, founder of LA Business Pros, and this segment's been brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.